In the news tonight, the Prime Minister says Jordan pins high hopes on an Iraqi pipeline project and calls for reopening the land route between the two countries. The World Food Programme expresses concern about food security in Mosul as the battle there enters the second month. And renewed Syrian and Russian airstrikes kill at least 25 people in rebel-held eastern Aleppo. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Prime Minister Hani Molki hailed former Turkish President Abdullah Gül's efforts to boost relations with Jordan during his term in office. Molki welcomed the former Turkish leader who is attending the Amman Security Forum. Molki said Gül's presidency had witnessed the signing of a free trade agreement between the two countries. Molki and Gül discussed the Syrian crisis and efforts to fight extremism and terrorism, as well as security, economic and social challenges facing Jordan and Turkey, which both host large numbers of Syrian refugees. They agreed that a political solution is the only path in Syria. They also said the Palestinian issue is at the core of the conflict in the Middle East and that solving it would help solve other crises. Molki also discussed regional conflicts and the fight against terrorism with the Iraqi Parliament Speaker Salim al-Jbouri. The Prime Minister referred to the brotherly Jordanian-Iraqi ties, reiterating the kingdom's support for a united and stable Iraq. Jordan, Molki said, stood by Iraq in fighting terrorism and addressing the various challenges facing the country. Molki said Jordan attached great importance to a planned oil pipeline between the southern Iraqi city of Basra and the Red Sea port of Aqaba. The pipeline, he said, would allow Iraq to export its oil and provide Jordan with its oil needs. The Prime Minister also called for reopening the land crossing between Jordan and Iraq to ensure the movement of people and goods between the two countries. Jordan told a meeting of the Muslim countries that it strongly rejects the Houthi militias' use of Yemeni territory as a launchpad to undermine the security of the Gulf Arab states. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Nasser Judeh said Jordan totally rejects the Houthi firing of a ballistic missile on the holy city of Mecca. He spoke at an extraordinary meeting of the foreign ministers of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC) held in Mecca to discuss the recent missile attack on the holy city. Judeh called it a blatant failed assault and a provocation against Muslims across the world. He said Saudi Arabia's security is part of Jordan's security and the security of the Arab and Muslim nation as a whole. Judeh said a political solution is the only way out of the conflict in Yemen. The Senate's Palestine Committee condemned proposed Israeli legislation banning the Muslim call to prayer from mosque loudspeakers in occupied East Jerusalem. Right-wing lawmakers in the Israeli Knesset are pushing for the so-called Muezzin bill, which would ban the summoning of worshippers from loudspeakers at the Haram al-Sharif mosque compound. The committee's head, Senator Haya al-Gararle, said such Israeli provocations had been a trait of the occupation government, which would inflame religious conflict. He said Jordan rejects all Israeli violations against the Palestinians and Muslim and Christian holy shrines in Jerusalem. The US-backed offensive to crush Daesh terrorists in its last major city stronghold in Iraq entered a second month. The militants have been steadily retreating from areas around Mosul into the city since the battle started on October 17 with air and ground support from a US-led coalition. Iranian-backed Shiite militias announced the capture of the Tel Afar air base west of Mosul. Other army units have yet to enter from the northern and the southern sides. The World Food Programme WFP expressed concerns over food security in Mosul. WFP said it was working with partners to monitor front lines and working to reach families in need as soon as there was safe access. According to WFP, more than 100,000 people affected by the conflict have been provided with the ready-to-eat food and monthly food rations.
Main objective is to understand their food needs, and in case there is a need, WFP will be here to support these families with a one-month ration.
As the Iraqi army gains ground in the battle for Mosul, a suicide bomber struck near the Iraqi capital. The bomber detonated a car laden with explosives at a wedding in a Sunni town west of Baghdad, killing 12 and wounding 35. The attack appeared to have targeted Sunni provincial officials opposed to Daesh, who were attending the wedding in the town of Emirat Fallujah. Airstrikes and shelling killed at least 25 people in rebel-held eastern Aleppo on the third day of renewed bombing after a weeks-long pause. The mayor of the besieged sector warned of a total lack of fuel and food as winter sets in. The Russian Defense Ministry said it launched its first attacks on militant targets in Syria involving warplanes from both Russian and Syrian air bases as well as from a Russian aircraft carrier. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights Monitoring Group said shelling and airstrikes from helicopters and jets hit the eastern half of the city, causing severe damage. Airstrikes also hit rebel-held areas west and south of Aleppo. The bombardment of eastern Aleppo restarted yesterday after a weeks-long pause. Frequent airstrikes on hospitals and the disruption and pollution of water supplies have worsened the humanitarian crisis in the city. Medicines, food and fuel are all severely in short supply. In Syria's Raqqa governorate, video uploaded to social media appears to show the moment when the Syrian Democratic Forces shot and destroyed a Daesh suicide car bomb. The vehicle was driving towards the anti-Daesh forces in the northern Raqqa governorate in Syria. The footage shows the vehicle, said to belong to Daesh and believed to be rigged with explosives, driving towards the fighters. A missile first missed the car, but it was hit by a second. US President Barack Obama said it would be naive to expect a 180-degree turn by Russia or Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. He said the United States and its allies would continue to try to effect change to end the deadly Syrian crisis. Obama told a joint news conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin that he hoped President-elect Donald Trump could stand up to Russia when needed.
Hope is that the president-elect coming in takes a similarly constructive approach, finding areas where we can cooperate with Russia, where our values and interests align, but that the president-elect also is willing to stand up to Russia where they are deviating from our values and international norms. I don't expect that the president-elect will follow exactly our blueprint or our approach, but my hope is that he does not simply take a realpolitik approach and suggest that, if we just cut some deals with Russia, even if it hurts people or even if it violates international norms or even if it leaves smaller countries vulnerable or creates long-term problems in regions like Syria, that we just do whatever is convenient at the time.
Yemen's foreign minister reaffirmed his government rejection of a ceasefire offer by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. It came a day after heavy fighting between government troops and opposition forces in various parts of Yemen left 51 dead. The Arab coalition and Houthi fighters agreed to a temporary cessation of hostilities starting today. Foreign Minister Abdel Malik al-Mikhlafi said his government is not interested in the latest ceasefire plan involving the Houthis. He said there was no agreement but just a declaration, which means nothing. The minister said the government refused the ceasefire because it doesn't commit to the international agreement and gives a lot of power to the Houthis, more than what the Yemeni people accept. A Chinese golden pheasant, which apparently looks like US President-elect Donald Trump, attracted visitors in a Chinese safari park. The head of the bird feeders in the park said it had about 50 of such species, adding that the male pheasant with a golden yellow crest are much showy than the female. Visitors said the species reminded them of Trump's flamboyant hairstyle. The bird is native to China and is among national protected animal species in the country. Stan Wawrinka recovered from his drubbing by Kai Nishikori to win 7-6, 7-6 in his group match against Marin Cilic at the ATP World Tour Finals. The Swiss player won in straight sets, albeit through tie-breakers. US Open champion Wawrinka now faces world number 1 Andy Murray tomorrow.
Game, set and match. Wawrinka.
Thousands of people around the world were attempting new records on Guinness World Records Day with all sorts of feats. In Britain, Simon Berry took the Guinness World Records title for highest bungee dunk after dipping a biscuit into a cup of tea from his 73-meter bungee rope. Martin Rees did about 10 magic tricks while skydiving from a roughly 15,000 feet to get his name into the record book. In London, Paolo Gabriele de Silva and Katusha Lai were crowned the new title holders of shortest married couple with a combined height of 181.41 centimeter.
Stop. Yes.
And finally, the weather forecast. It will remain relatively chilly across many regions tonight, but fair in the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea with a high of 29 degrees. Tomorrow, a slight rise in temperature is expected, so it will be pleasant across many areas with clouds appearing at various altitudes. Winds will be easterly to northeasterly moderate. The port city of Aqaba should expect mild conditions tomorrow with a high of 29 degrees, northerly moderate winds and somewhat choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To close our top stories once again, the Prime Minister says Jordan pins high hopes on an Iraqi pipeline project and calls for reopening the land route between the two countries. The World Food Programme expresses concern about food security in Mosul as the battle there enters the second month. And renewed Syrian and Russian airstrikes kill at least 25 people in rebel-held eastern Aleppo. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Lou Balgar. Thank you for joining us and have a lovely weekend.